First gig with the Axe FX3 tonight. I want to show you guys the preset that I'm using and why I'm doing certain things that I'm doing. Essentially, this is all based around the Atomica High model, which is one of my favorite amps in the Axe FX3. And I've set up a couple of different scenes. Each scene essentially has a different channel of the amp. So the main two scenes that I would live on most of the night are this crunch scene, where I'm using the Atomica. You can see how it's set up. This is what it sounds like. All I've done there is add a little bit of a T808 mod preamp boost, and I'm using a cab IR that I made of my main Marshall 412. I've posted this one up on the forum before, and you can download it and use it yourself. I think it sounds real sweet. Together with that, I have used a parametric EQ block to basically, I think it's got a low cut at about 100 Hertz, as you can see, high cut at 6.5K, and I've pulled out around 3K and 5K with a really high Q. The reason being, when you play this really, really loud, all of those frequencies are a little bit harsh on the ears. So the low cut is to leave space for the boomy bass guitar. Funnily enough, we're using the bass through the Axe 3 as well. As you can see, this separate line down here, or I'll break that down at the end really quickly. And then the 3K and 5K are basically what I would refer to with this particular IR. They're like the ice pick frequencies. So pulling a bit of those out mellows everything out at high volumes, and then the 6.5 just takes out all the fizz. This is the difference if I turn it off and then I turn it on. So there you go. If you're listening at low volume, you're going to go, dude, it just sounds like you made it sound really dull, but this really makes a difference at high volume. They're essentially the same settings that I've been using on my AX8. And then the last part of the chain is a Recording Studio C reverb with the mix at 5%. You can see I've turned the stereo spread down to 0 because I'm playing in mono for this gig. And yeah, basically 0.5 seconds for the time. All I've done is, in the advanced section, turn the early level up and turn the late level down a bit, just because we're using in-ear monitors. It basically makes stuff sound a little bit less like harsh, and gives it a bit of space, which you want when you're using in-ears, because in-ears can always sound a bit too harsh and direct. So that's the main scene that I live on. And then there's also, I think it's scene 3 here, is the same amp. I'm using a different channel though. Let me turn this phaser off. That shouldn't be on there. I'll save that. And I'll also turn the delay off. That shouldn't be on for this scene either. You can see it pays to prepare in advance with these kind of things. So the amp, again, is the Atomica High, but I've turned the input trim down to 0.5, and I've turned the input drive off a bit, and there's no boost. This is just meant to be kind of like in between clean, in between filth. If I play on the middle pickup on this guitar, you get a really nice, not quite chimey, but it's just a little less full on. So that to me is kind of like my ideal edge of breakup Marshall kind of tone. I can use my volume control if I want less gain, and if I want more gain on this scene, I can kick in a drive block with the Tone of Kings, which gives me this. So that was nice basically for 70s stuff, and the other scene is really good for like 80s, 90s, modern kind of stuff. The other main scene that I use is for all the Ragdoll stuff. This particular gig tonight, we're doing a mix of original stuff and cover stuff. We basically do like a whole set of cover stuff, and then the rest of the night is all tunes that we actually like, you know, AC/DC and Zeppelin, and we do some cool stuff like Whitesnake and Motley Crue from the 80s. So this is the Atomica High model. I've got a grinder boost this time in the preamp section, and I've turned the bass up a little bit and the gain up a little bit. This is for all the Ragdoll songs where I need a bit more chunk and a bit more chugga chugga. So that one's super fun to play with. That's where I would live most of the time when I'm just playing at home as well. Now, the way I use these, I think of these scenes as separate rigs. So, for example, I would go, say we're going to play a song, I don't know, what's a cover song that we do in the set, like we were doing a Led Zeppelin song, for example. And I'm not trying to get a Jimmy Page style tone for this, I'm just trying to get a tone which roughly sounds error appropriate. And in this case, I'll go, okay, cool, say we're playing the song, say we're doing like a song like Rock and Roll or something, and I just want to have some different shades of gain and a few different effects in there. So I'll just basically sit on this, and this would be the main rhythm guitar sound, and I kick a drive and a phaser in on the solo. Why not? As you can hear, I also don't know how to play any of the guitar solos there, so it's more a case of just jamming and having a bunch of fun with that. So I would set up that particular scene, and then I can use the FC6 to kick on any of the effects that I want in there. Or if we were doing a Ragdoll song, for example, I could just live on scene 5, and you know, if I need, I don't know, for a particular section, I might want to have rhythmic delay on top of my tone. I can use the FC6 and I can activate channel B on the delay, so I can go from chunk to chunk plus rhythmic delay. That kind of thing. So I think of it as selecting a particular rig for a particular song, which is going to basically give me a ballpark kind of tone, and then I can use the volume controls on my guitar and the tone controls, and I can use the drive pedal and the various effects that I've got on my effects scene. So basically on the FC6 I would select a scene and I would immediately go to the effects layout where I've got tap tempo, I've got tuner, and I've got the 4 main effects that I use. So it's not really crazy difficult what's going on there, but it really gives me a lot of versatility for the gig. I've also got a dedicated lead scene in here which kicks in the BB pre-drive, as you can see here on the screen, and a delay basically set up. The way I've kind of done this is I've turned the spread down to 0, so it's still going to be in mono, but I've set the left-right time ratio to 75% so that I can have a quarter note, and 75% of a quarter note is a dotted eighth, and it gives me this. And that is pretty much how I run this. Scene 4 is set up as an instant access compressed version of scene 3, the gritty scene, but it's essentially like going, okay, cool, I've got my main rock guitar tone, then I've got a kind of mellower version of it, and I've got a more extreme version of it, and I've got a lead scene, and that is all I need to do the gigs that I need to do like this one tonight. So really quickly, I'll give you guys a demo of the bass sound. As you can hear, I'm not a bass player, but that bass sounds really good with this particular setup. The way I've set up the SV bass on this one is basically bass at 2, middle at 3, treble at 6, and on the lead scene, I've actually got the input drive turned up a little bit, as well as the level turned up a little bit, so that when I hit the lead scene and my guitar's louder, the bass is a little bit louder and a little bit dirtier as well. On the main scene, it's just backed off a little bit. So that is the way I have set up my XFX3 and the FC6 to run direct to the PA, using in-ear monitors to hear myself, and it's such an easy setup. It means basically we've got this, what do we have, a 6-space rack with the mixer and the in-ears in it and everything else, and then a 3-space rack with the XFX3 and a drum kit, and we go into the PA and it's happy days. So that's basically the rig rundown for tonight's show, and pretty much what I'm going to be using going forward for live shows with Ragdoll. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, fire away, and I will see you real soon.